Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Hey, this is Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, and it is the first of the month, which means it is time for my monthly recap for the month of February. And let's start off with some basic channel updates. The channel continues to grow at a nice healthy pace. We're now at about 7,700 total subscriptions. The Discord is growing at a crazy rate, and that's awesome. I'm really happy about that because I get a lot of enjoyment out of talking with you all live about spoilers, about the books I'm reading, the books you're reading. And if you haven't joined yet, what are you doing? It's like the best Discord that exists. Click the link down below. You can check it out. But that has added 107 people in the last month, up to 405. So that's crazy growth that I've never gotten even close to experiencing before. The Patreon continues to expand, and I'm very happy about that. Thank you so much to all of my patrons for supporting. It went from 16 people now to 23 people, so that's awesome. Can't get upset about that. Did another live stream this past month, and I keep doing them kind of random. I'm not planning them out like most people do, where they'll say, join me for a live stream in a couple days. I just kind of go live, and if you find them, you find them. But you know, I want to plan them out more. My problem is that I'm very busy, and I do these videos that you see generally late at night after my family goes to sleep. And I live on the West Coast, and so by the time that I'm usually free to do a live stream, y'all are sleeping. And unless you're happen to be on the West Coast and you stay up late, or you're like living in Hawaii or something. But other than that, yeah, there's no way the live streams would work. So I do it on weekends, when the family is like busy, you know, or something's going on where I can get an hour away. So it's hard for me to plan, but I'll try to do a little bit better. I've heard a lot of people saying they want me to plan it a little bit better, so I will work on that. I am in the midst of planning a very big video that I think you all are going to enjoy. And it's where I go through my favorite fantasy series of all time, my number one, and then I go to all of my favorite booktubers and have them share what their favorite is. I did a similar video where they picked their favorite book. This will be series, and so check out the book one up above if you haven't seen it yet. That's a great video. I love seeing, I did it mostly for my benefit. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I love seeing what everybody, what everybody's favorites are and how they compare to mine. But yeah, this one's going to be huge. It's going to have 40 plus people participating, I think, and some way bigger booktubers than I had last time participate. So very excited about that and sharing it with you. And hopefully I'll have that out in like a week or so. I'm still waiting on some stragglers to send their videos in. And I'm in no rush, so I kind of want to wait till everybody gets it in, but it should be soon. And I'd say that the last thing I'll say as updates is I'm reading a lot less audiobooks than I used to. I used to, you know, go through, you know, fairly steadily get through like 60, 70 pages of audiobooks a day when that converts over from time to pages. But my new job that I have, I work like 10 minutes from my house, and I used to work like 45. That's where I listen to most of my audio. And so it's taken just a huge hit. I have more time to read physical books, but audiobooks, yeah, I am slacking on that front. So that's my update. Let us go into some channel stats. I read 6 books this month, which is kind of light. It's February though, so I get a little bit of there for a much shorter month. I read about 4,200 pages, which is down. It's down 600 from last month. So that might be the audiobook thing happening here. That brings me up to 13 books this year, and a little over 9,000 total pages. So I'm on track for what, like 55,000 pages, which is cool. I want to get above 50. That's really my main goal. You know, I have book goals and stuff, but I don't care if I hit them because, you know, I read fantasy. I read books that sometimes are like 1,500 pages. So what's more accurate for me is pages, and I want to read 50,000 pages, but I should definitely hit that this year. My average score this year is 3.65, which is low. I definitely want that to raise up, and because that's lower than I want. I want to be in the 4 range. I want to be 5, but you know, 4 I'll take. So we got some room to grow on that front. My views this month was about 70,000, and this is down about 5,000 from the last month, so pretty steady. And last month was great, so yeah, this month's great too. My hours watched this month for people watching was about 10,000 hours, which is almost exactly the same from last month. My subs this month were 725, which is down from 1,000 the month before. And my number one video was a video that I didn't even release this month. It was a video that I released towards the end of January, and it was released January 24th, and it was my fantasy series tier list, and that got 7,700 views this month. That's the first time that's ever happened, where my top video was one I didn't release this month. Then my next biggest was 6,600 or maybe 6,800, and that was my top series of all time based on viewer picks. So I did this video, check it out up here if you haven't seen it yet, where I had everybody submit their top fantasy series, and I did a bunch of data compilation in it and figured out what those were. And I compared it to my favorites, compared it to Reddit's favorites, and it was fun. And then my third most popular got about 5,000, and that was my top 10 favorite fantasy characters. So let's go into the books that I read and recap those a little bit. So the first book that I finished was Winter Solstice, which is part of the Wandering Inn series. This is by pirateaba. I predicted that I'd give it a 5 out of 5, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. So I started off disappointed. And this is going to be my most disappointing book that I read this month. Not the worst book that I read this month, but the most disappointing because I gave it a lower score than I wanted to. I predicted that I'd finish it on February 4th, and I did finish it on February 4th. And this is the fourth book that I've read in the Wandering Inn series. I'm reading the ebook version of this. They're all free on thewanderinginn.com, but I'm reading them in book form. And the first three I gave 5 out of 5s. And I assumed that I was just going to keep giving 5 out of 5s, but this one was weaker. It had multiple things that I thought were not as good. I thought the overall plot had some major problems with it. Not enough to make me hate the book or even dislike it. I liked the book a lot, but it just wasn't up there as my all-time favorites list. The ending of the book 2 was pretty weak. Just multiple storylines here that didn't totally click with me. Some that really, really did. But the balance there really made it so I couldn't give this much more than a 4. But I've been told when I talk about this that a lot of people feel the same way. And that I should be bouncing right back in the next book. So I'm excited for that. But my enthusiasm for this series is extremely high. It didn't take a big hit here with this one. The next book that I finished was The Stand by Stephen King. I predicted a 4 out of 5. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I predicted that I'd finish it on the 5th, and I finished it a little bit early on the 3rd. And this is a weird book for me. I obviously wanted to like it a lot more, but because I hear so many people say it's their favorite book of all time. And that certainly wasn't the case for me. I don't know if Stephen King's just the right author for me. I'm going to keep giving him a shot. I'm going to read The Dark Tower. I want to read Fairy Tale. I'm not big into horror. And I think that's where Stephen King kind of excels. But ultimately, my problem with Stephen King and this book also is the way that he writes his stories is so meandering. It feels like, and it turns out it's true because I've talked to people who've said this is the way it is that he doesn't plan things out, that he just sits down and writes. Now that's admirable, that he is so skilled that he cannot plan things out. But the problem is the end. The end of the 2 books that I've read, the endings are just weak. And of course your ending's going to be weak if you don't plan out your book. But it just seems so odd to me. And I get that that's his style and that helps him and it makes him a better writer and write better characters because he can go into depth on these characters and, figure it out as he goes and really write, really interesting characters. And I think he does. His character writing is clearly the best part of what he does. But maybe spend a day planning out your story a little bit, figuring out where you want to end and then get to that point. But it just, when the ending falls flat, it really hurts my enjoyment out of a book. And The Stand is just so meandering. You get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages that just didn't need to be written. Character development can only take you so far. And that's really all this book was. Then I read Of Blood and Fire. This is part of The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. This is my first Ryan Cahill book. I predicted that I'd give it a 4 out of 5, and I did give it a 4 out of 5. I also predicted that I finish it on the 9th, and I did finish it on the 9th. So, kudos to me for nailing my predictions there. I wish I was wrong. I wish it got a 5 out of 5, but so I really like this book. It's very good. It has me very enthusiastic about the series going forward. My problem here is that it didn't do anything new. It was heavily borrowed from other fantasy series. The one that I caught most notably was The Wheel of Time. It had very similar plot structure to that, and it made it just unoriginal. So nothing that it did felt new. And I don't need books to be new for me to like them. Clearly, I liked this one. But for me to really think of it as its own and doing its own thing and giving it a super high rating, you're gonna have to do something unique, and it wasn't here. Now, I am told unanimously from people that enjoy this series that the first is the weakest, and that in the next books that I'm gonna get the things that I was hoping for in those. I also had a problem with the very limited point of views, and I'm told the point of views greatly expand. So yeah, I'm hyped up about the series, and I can't wait to see where Ryan Cahill takes it, because he's a very good author. Then I read Comanche Moon. This is the last book in the Lonesome Dove Quartet by Larry McMurtry. I predicted a 4 out of 5. I did give it a 4 out of 5. I predicted that I'd finish it on the 16th, and I did finish it on the 16th. So another pat on the back for old Matt. And yeah, I didn't even do a review of this one because nobody really cares about my history books that I read sometimes, and I'm not going to read a lot more. I had a list that I wanted to get through, and I'm finally done. But I kept reading these books because Lonesome Dove, the original, is so good. And up until I just read The Grace of Kings, it was my second favorite book that I've ever read. Now it's the third. And I kept feeling like, Larry McMurtry can write his butt off. And if he can just pull that out again in these stories, I'm going to love him. But he didn't diminish as a writer in these other books that were, both prequels and a sequel to The Lonesome Dove. They just took weird plot directions. And so the writing quality was amazing, but the plots just weren't there. And the characters that he chose to write about, I didn't get enough of the ones that I loved, and I got too much of the ones that I didn't care as much about. So yeah, so I gave ultimately 3 of the books a 4 out of 5, but I wouldn't wholeheartedly endorse them unless you're really into Westerns. And if you are into Westerns, you've already read them. But my recommendation is read Lonesome Dove. And if you love Lonesome Dove like I did, then keep reading. But if you thought it was just good or just great, then stop. But if you thought it's at the pinnacle of books, then keep going. Because they were worth it, but I can't endorse them to everybody. Then I read a reread for me. I read The Wise Man's Fear, part of the Kingkiller Chronicle, the second book by Patrick Rothfuss. I predicted a 4 out of 5, like I gave it the first time, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. And I predicted I'd finish it on the 22nd, and I read pretty quick here. I finished it on the 20th. And yeah, so I read this book 8 years ago on my honeymoon, and I read both the Kingkiller books at the same time, and I loved the first. I gave it a top tier 5 out of 5, but the second one I thought was noticeably worse. But man, I didn't see that this time around. I read a book that I enjoyed more than the first book, and I don't think that's a popular opinion. In fact, I know it's not. But for me, it's true. It took out all of the things that I had a problem with in the first book and fixed all of them, but then inserted a new problem. And the new problem is there's this weird section of the book involving a fairy that I liked. Most people hate. I liked it, but it was not nearly as good as the parts that I loved in the rest of the book. But yeah, the writing quality here is just amazing. Patrick Rothfuss is incredible. He's just such a good writer. I hope so dearly that he ends up putting the last book of the series out, because I can't wait to read it. But if he doesn't, he doesn't. But I hope that it does. But I can wait. If I need to wait another 10 years, I'll wait another 10 years. I got a lot of books to read, but man, when that book comes out, I will be at the front of the line waiting to read that one, because oh man, was this book good. Then the last book that I read, a book that I just reviewed yesterday, is The Grace of Kings. This is part of the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I predicted a 4 out of 5. I gave it a 5 out of 5. And I predicted I'd finish it on the 27th, and I finished it on the 26th. And so I'm messing up my timelines here. This is 2 days ago that I reviewed this one. Days kind of blend together. And this is simultaneously, it gets my most pleasant surprise of a book that I read this month and the best book that I read this month. Because, oh my God, it's so good. It's the second best book that I've ever read. It's incredible. Everything about it's perfect. It's got all of the greatest parts of like Game of Thrones and then amplifies them like a lot. And I love Game of Thrones, but it is like the best political, war, battles and, the revolt. And it's just so perfect. If you like books that are crazy fast paced and really emphasize the political side of things, yeah, this is the book. So those are the books that I read. I predicted that I'd give overall a 4.2, and I gave a 4.3. This is the first time that I have ever done this, where my predicted score was lower than my actual score. And that is awesome. That's a great feeling. And it's gonna always be like that the other way, because every now and then I'll give like a 1 and a 2, and I'm never gonna predict that I'm gonna read a 1 or a 2. So I'm gonna end up being disappointed most months, but not this month. This is a great month. This is an amazing month. And my predictions were so close to accurate, both on the predicted scores. I was 0.1 off, and by days. I only was off by 5 total days out of all the books. I missed 2 of them by 2 and 1 of them by 1, so pretty accurate. Got to hand it to myself for being crazy OCD and consistent with how much I read. So that's it for the books, but let us go to the book mail portion of this. I get books sent to me. I don't really have time to read them, but I do tell authors that if you want to send me your book, I will feature it in my monthly recap video. So I got 3 of them. Let's check them out. The first is 𝐒𝐮𝐥. This is by Black Mike. Great name, Mike. I like it. So it's 𝐒𝐮𝐥, the Book of Mammon, and I'm going to read the back cover for you. It's not very long. A special agent with a secret, a detective with a score to settle. Can they come together in time to stop a demon given untold power by the greed of millions? Michael Lieberman is a special agent in charge of an anti-terrorism unit. When a case leads him to a strange world of spirits and demons revealing his own angelic heritage, Michael never wavers, following the trail where it leads. Sarah Wilson can't see what Michael sees, but when his case proves to be linked to a murder she is investigating, she cannot help but be drawn in as well. As she and Michael get closer to finding answers, a specter from her past rears its ugly head. As Michael is drawn deeper and deeper into the secret world of demons and spirits, he finds he is pulling Sarah in with him. As they draw closer to one another, and the secrets of the past lives reach out to claim them, can Michael and Sarah save one another? So, if that intrigues you, check out 𝐒𝐮𝐥 by Black Mike. Number 2 is The Lost Paladin. This is by Matthew Marcellus. Great first name there, Matthew. And I am going to read the back here. So, a king is wounded during a hunting trip. His youngest son, Talar, must head south to Kappa in his place to swear fealty to the ruthless emperor. A fugitive dwarf, Doberist, unwanted by all, rescues an immortal elf. The elf, Aemon, is being hunted by the emperor's henchmen who seek his immortal blood. A princess, Mona, is trapped in Kappa by the emperor who murdered her parents. She meets Talar at the academy in the heart of Kappa. Can she trust this strange prince from the north to help her escape? An impoverished youth from the slums of Kappa, Marcus, escapes the filthy, chaotic capital to the wilderness. He tries to make his fortune-cutting worship mass for the emperor. What he finds in the wild will make him wish he stayed in Kappa. An old healer travels through the wilderness searching for his friend who is desperately needed. These stories come together in The Lost Paladin, the first book in the Lost Paladin trilogy. That actually sounds pretty dope. And yeah, I'm going to put this on my list of long-term TBR because I am very intrigued by what I just read. So the last is a big chonker of a book. This is 9 of Swords by Brooklyn Quintana. Is that right? Quintana? And this is pretty short back here. So, welcome to the Morency Academy of Military Arts. As one of our students, we expect that you will fight till the end and win by any means necessary. Now that you're here, there are a few things you should be made aware of. Firstly, be mindful of the water's edge. The mermaids are not always to be trusted, and the dolphins are quite unreliable. Second, try not to get lost in the catacombs. Should you wander too far, your safety cannot be guaranteed. And remember, be wary of the jungle. The trees like to rearrange themselves, and do steer clear of the vines, lest you not return from your adventure intact or even alive. We hope to see you at the end of the year games, should you make it that far. That's pretty cool. I like the different type of summary that Brooklyn did on this. That's cool and unique. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for sticking with it. Tomorrow I am going to be releasing, as always, my TBR list for the month of March. So thank you so much for the few of you that have made it this far, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all of my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Sky, Russell, Ron Reich, Romeo Mike, CJ, My Book is Lit, and Jamie.